All right, everyone. Welcome to the Brilliance in Commerce House of Freedom International Natural Law Trust webinar. We have the good fortune of our protege, Dominique Hackett, and our teacher, Randall Hillner, joining us today. And Randall will be speaking here in a few minutes. So thank you. It's March 16th, 2022. And it's a great day. All things are improving in this world, partly thanks to those of you who are with us today on the program. Most of our clients and those of us who are helping to spread the information that Brilliance in Commerce gives are generally of higher awareness, more maturity, greater intelligence, better informed, and helping to reduce the fear out there, improve the perception of a great world unfolding with the dark forces being defeated, removed from the planet. This instrument, the trust, provides asset protection, but we're leading towards a time when perhaps crime will not exist anymore, and then it will just be an instrument of the efficient distribution of resources. So we have House of Freedom International Natural Trusts, Liberty Debt Elimination Systems, and other affiliate programs. We are members of the Worldwide Charter for Fair International Commerce, so take a look at that page if you haven't already on the website. Today being March 16th, the next trust webinar featuring Randall Hillner as our speaker will be May 18th, so put that on your calendar. And to look at past YouTube videos of these webinars, go to www.brilliance-videos.com. For those who need a phone number, that's 360-200-7521. And a website, go to the affiliate who referred you. If you don't have an affiliate, then just go to the generic link houseoffreedomtrust.com with dashes between each of the words. My name is Tonson Fairmont. I'm the founder of Brilliance in Commerce, consultant and bank instruments investment platforms, and speaker on radio shows and former speaker at international seminars, author of a couple of books, and you'll see more information about those in our newsletters. If you haven't already subscribed to our newsletter, and if you heard about this webinar from someone else, be sure to subscribe to the webinar, to the newsletter. All right, here's Randall Bio, Trust Department head, and our prolific trust writer. You'll get a little bit of history today of the trust, how it started and how he came into the picture. And so he's been the founder and the creator and the improver, the crafter, the polisher, the refiner of this state-of-the-art instrument, and founder of White Light Unlimited, One People's Public Trust, and creator of International Natural Law Trusts. So you will enjoy. Those of you who know Randall already know that he enjoys his work very much. Dominique Hackett assists with many clients, teaches the trust webinar for study group each month. And those of you who are paid trust clients know you have the invitation, and many of you have been participating, and you know Dominique. Dominique, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. Today's theme, trusts now and into the future. So Randall, I'm going to ask you to unmute and let's proceed.
Well, hello, everybody. It's a wonderful weekend here.
Aloha.
And the weather's beautiful, and I am grateful that all of you have showed up to learn a little bit about trust today. Tonson and I have been hanging out with this stuff and have brought Dominique on and have a whole little tribe, I guess you'd call it, that we all pull together and try to tell the truth, get it out there so people can feel safe and happy going into the future. So I think I'd like to start a little history, just brief, because if we have a slide here, and I'll begin. building an estate protected into the future. That's what we do. That's what the king often did way back. Early, they were all in the first 1,000 years, all over Europe was based on tribes. Everybody was in a tribe. They had a chief, or if he called himself a king. We know that kings and queens were substantial in Egypt back 5,000 years ago even. So what happened is as time evolved and things got changed, wars happened, tribes kind of disappeared and were collected into kingdoms. And so you had bigger amounts of people, and basically you had a king or a queen. Well, during the first 1,000 years in England, it was mostly on tribes in Europe. And then some of the bigger tribes in Europe came over to to England and corral all the tribes, and they put them under a king. Now, unfortunately, this king claimed that it was his divine right to rule all the people. So that what happens is you have a very inequitable process happening because the king gets all the gold. The people at the bottom, they just rake the hay so that they can get the gold to the king so they don't get thrown off the ranch. So that's how it began. Then people began to get tired of that. Finally, around the early 1200s, they said enough. And so the king at that time, not wishing to get his head cut off, said, okay, we'll create this Magna Carta, about 1200 AD. And said, if you don't cut my head off, then I'll sign this document. And that document, called the Magna Carta, was the first true document that gave the power back. However, what happened is it didn't go back to the people. It only went to land barons. I think that's in the next slide.
Yeah, Magna Carta is in the next one after this.
Yeah. So look at that guy. Just things that he can do everything. That's what the king did in the early days. He was just able to sit back and not have to prove himself and just assume that by divine right, he was going to rule the country. And they got tired of that too, because when the Crusades started to happen, the land barons, they didn't trust the king at all. Excuse me here for a moment. Thank you. They didn't really trust the king. So they, some of them they created a trust. This is the early days of trust. They put this contract together, and they contracted either with the church, or if they had a good friend that they could trust. And then they went off to fight in the Crusades, and they knew that most of them wouldn't come back. So they wanted to protect their property for the family. And that's how it all began. And that's how the church got all its wealth, because the land barons that gave their major estates, those are the estates that had a lot of crop potential and gold, basically, the value of that made the church quite rich. And we know that today. But then, and this is why we had the first English people said, well, you're not going to stay here in England and let you have all the gold. So they took off, and they built some sturdy ships, and they just chugged out and said, au revoir, we're going off to America. We're going to start something new. So they came in and they began, some people went up to New England. Maybe that's why they call it New England. And some people went down south. But together, they started what was the early East Coast. And they put it together. There was no tax until the King of England still dominated. And they said, no, the heck with this. So the next time the king was supposed to get his supplies of tea and food, they went on to the boat and they said, we're going to have the Boston Tea Party. They threw all the king's tea into the river. It made a really strong tea, but the king got the idea. And so that's where we had the revolution and the first status of America being on its own feet. Now
Sorry,
that came colonies and then states and then the Declaration of Independence. And it was all just a progression of people's consciousness, not just their wealth, but they were educated more and more and more. And so they created trust that protected the estate from anybody, whether it was the king or the land barons. And so even people that just had a modest little ranch up in Vermont or way down in West Virginia, they could create a contract with their best friend, or if they trusted the churchman, and they fought the revolution and they beat the king. They said, don't come back. Although he didn't disappear completely, as we know. But the fact was that people refined their contracts with the government so that they weren't just giving it to them without any compensation. If I give you money, if I give you gold for my estate, then I deserve your protection and I deserve, some status. So that's how the whole colonies grew, states grew, they grew into states. Then those states, they went off to the west more and more and more. And of course, some of the people on the East Coast during the colonies had to fight the Indians. And then, you have all that battle scene, which is still going on today, I think, if you turn on the TV. But we don't want to talk about that.
say,
If we
Randall,
can have a
my
next
brother,
slide.
can you see the slides?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. You were going so fast in your story, I wasn't able to keep up, but maybe
Oh,
help
that's all
me,
right.
tell me when to change them.
Well, I was just finishing up this slide in front of me, which is the Magna Carta and
Okay,
the Crusades and the Boston Tea Party and things
Okay.
like that. And we, of course, we had Indians, the New England people, some of them were not discretionary, so they bonded with the Indians and the Pilgrims. They had together. Indians taught them a lot of ways to be in the wild kingdom, and some people fought the Indians, and some people made them great compadres. Well, this is how all of New England started. Of course, we know that from that we grew into the industrial age and into civil government and to a living of what we have around today. Here in 2022, that's it's about 600 years from when the Pilgrims came over. So if you give me the next slide, we'll see if we can expand on the story a little. But see, what happened is the early settlers, they were tired of the king dictating how they would write a contract. So they began to go and they created their own contract because if they created a statutory contract, the king could dip his fingers into the pie, and they didn't want that to happen. So that, of course, we had the revolution and the Tea Party because people wanted freedom. And so they declared this freedom by going to war. And then out of that came Constitution. They finally pushed King George back across the sea, and he had to stay over in England unless he was willing to start another war, which he didn't want to do because he didn't have any gold anymore, because the New England people, the people that came over to America, weren't going to give him his gold. And then the Constitution said that the right of contract shall not be infringed. That's how we know that we can create a contract. That's what we've done with all the trust work over the past 500, 600 years. Next slide, please. So refined by use, the wealth kept had further more trade. They had more trading power. They could expand their boundaries farther into the west, or they could go into different continents and set up contracts with people. And that was based on the common law, natural law, because it was private. The king didn't have his hand in it, and it was really basically between friends or people that trusted each other. It didn't register with any government. So that's what's been happening for the last 300 or 400 years, is the trust has been refined, contracts have been refined, even though some of the states and some of the government still wants you to be under statutory law. It's only a choice now. You have the right to your own contract, and you write the contract the way your conscience tells you. Okay, next level, please. Slide. So in most countries, the business, they had to do business in different places. And so the banks started to come in forehand, because one of the things is you can only carry so much gold, but it's easy to carry paper. So they figured out, well, if we can maybe have a trusted government, we could probably do that, because we have to be able to put our gold in a safe place, in a vault, and it has to be secure. So that's what we have today. So basically, the people have given their gold up to the government, but it should be available to them at any time. And in the early days, when paper came out, it was truly based on gold. It wasn't based on the government. Excuse me if I have allowed somebody doing construction outside. So anyway, they still wanted to have you keep control of you in some way. So the bankers made you have an ID number. And that ID number was for basically banking purposes only. And when you apply for a tax ID, what you have to do for every trust that you open, you apply for a tax ID, but it's only for banking purposes. In other words, you're not registering it. In a lot of countries, you have to actually register the trust with the government. And that's what we left England for. We didn't want to be registering our trust with any government. We wanted to have a free exchange of our endeavors. We would trade. We could trade the produce we made. We could take it to the bank, and the bank would take an accounting for it, and they would give us a note or dollar bills, which were backed by gold. And you could actually trade that currency in for real gold, because it was backed by real gold. Unfortunately, government got even more anxious, and they wanted to supply, they wanted to have more power. So eventually, it's all crumbling down, but we're looking now, that's more and more interest in these independent bankers. I have been involved with a couple of projects, and actually trying to refine and contract and have a private banking system, so that the banker only backs whatever he gives you is backed by gold. It's in a vault, you actually have a gold certificate with your name on it for the ounces of gold that you hold in the bank. Now, I'm looking forward to that day when we actually have a true dollar bill, true treasury note again. And that freedom will jump up another whole bunch of economic ways. When you have real gold, you have real money backed by real gold, then you're on your way to having a sovereign nation. Get back to that sovereignty for the nation, for the states, and for you. You want to be a sovereign again. Get out of the taxing system and be your own person. And the reason, I think the next slide is what I'm looking for. And out of that has evolved what we have now, the Natural Law Trust. BIC is formed. I've joined with BIC to let them use the original trust I use. And because we've worked together so much on it, I've collected people that I've worked with. The mentor I had began to do trust work in the 1950s. And I began to work with him in the 1980s. And I've been doing it ever since. And then Tanzan and I have been friends and been associates on a number of different projects. So we collaborated, and now we've got Natural Law Trust, BIC. And then there was one slide. Were you going to put it in about the future, Tanzan? Did that slide ever happen?
That's a couple slides up.
Oh, okay. The time for anyone to start is now. Just like the newborn child must be educated if he's going to reach his full potential. So do the trustees and beneficiaries. And that's why we produce this seminar every month, so that every other month, so that you could learn about trust law to the extent you need to. You don't need to be an expert like myself unless you want to be, and then I can help train you do that, or on your own. There's lots of ways to educate yourself, but we're doing quite a bit right here. So if you want to reach your full potential, then come aboard, listen to these seminars, go back and listen to the ones that we've had before, and hopefully you'll learn enough so that you can successfully run your trust. It's like running in any business. If you run your business well, then it's successful. And the same with the trust. If you run your trust appropriately, then it will grow into the future. Next slide. Creation of early understanding to mature understanding, just like teaching your child. Start early and it goes into mature understanding. If you went back and looked at all of the videos that we've done, you find almost 2 years of videos, and you would get an education that would set you up in running your trust quite successfully. Teach your children. That's what we have to do, and teach each other. Okay, next. As you can see, the whys throughout the history, especially incarnate today, preparing mankind for the golden age. Many of us see this coming sooner than most people would expect. We likewise see the Natural Law Trust continuing to play an important role, along with crime disappearing off the planet. When there is no longer any need for protecting one's asset from aggressors and thieves, there will still be the need for efficient distribution of your resources, long-term estate planning. And that's what the trust does, regardless, whether it's to protect yourself from anybody or to be able to distribute your assets accordingly. That's what the Natural Trust would be. And that's why it's never going to be obsolete. It just goes on and on and on. With proper training, you know how to create the next level of trustees, successive trustees, and on into the future. So teaching your children, you can't miss. So right up, get ready, get your Natural Law Trust in order, get your questions together, and once you join up, get yourself a trust, then you have access to me all the time. So without ado, and get your questions ready, okay? This is another one here. We continue to refine our work, keeping abreast with trust law. We offer an essential education to going to build an estate that grows and grows into the future with strength and aliveness. Okay, who's got questions?
Well, we have one in the chat. Randall. It says, can anyone move money from one trust to another trust from a different source?
Yes. It's just like a business. You can assign assets, you can take loans, you can move money around, like running a business. All you have to do, basic part is, but the trustees of each trust have to decide and sign the contract. So like anything, like you signing the trust contract, you would sign a contract with another trust, and you would either trade or buy and sell commodities. It's and the trustees can actually, the trustees can also assign managers. So they might have a farm, the trust might have a farm, and so it would employ people, maybe a manager and some people to work, some workers, and they would do business just like any other business.
All right. Someone asks, do you register new trusts with the corporate state government or federal corporation?
No, there's no need to register. You do need an ID for banking purposes, because right now the banks own, or the government owns the money. So until people of the Americas can take back their lawful right to money on their own, we have free banking, the government will always be pestering you to try to grab some of that money. So we have to look forward and educate everybody enough so that we all have freedom of money and freedom of expression.
All
And that's what
right.
we're trying to do with Natural Law Trust.
Oscar asks, how many businesses can be under one trust?
How many do you want? Many as possible. But as things grow, you'll see that one might be larger or fuller than it can be handled by those two trustees. So you break off and you create a new trust. You out of that, you have two new trustees, and the beneficiary would be the old trust. And it just keeps on spreading out, spreading out, spreading out. Like the apples on the tree. Tree gets bigger, there's more apples. As more freedom happens, more people write natural law trust, then the expansion of the economy will go accordingly.
Thank you. Colette asks, when you assign assets to the trust, do they all need to be notarized?
No,
By signing the trust documents, is that all that is needed?
but signing the trust documents is essential for putting the trust into its active mode. There's only one notary that takes place, and that's for people that have some foreign currency for a particular experience that's happening across the money program of the world. There's supposedly going to be a reset of all the value of money, and you want to put that currency into a trust and have it notarized so that it's date stamped and people know it went in before the RV happened. But you don't have to notarize the trust, because basically the three of you, you have the creator and the two trustees, already know each other and they trust each other. And so there's no need to notarize. If there's a particular thing and you want to notarize it, like you do have to notarize when the trust buys or sells real estate, then you always have to do the real estate papers through a notary. So for make the trust active, you don't need to notarize the whole trust.
All right, thank you. Kelly, everyone, I wanted to mention that we are very privileged today to have Kelly on the line. I'll leave her last name for when she's talking to you privately, perhaps, but go to our website, the Brilliance in Commerce website, and at the top you'll see resources, and click on that down menu and you will see freedom from tax. And then when you get on that page, the first item is make your bank accounts tax exempt. So Kelly is America's expert on how to make all the money in your bank account tax exempt by converting Federal Reserve notes to United States notes. So Kelly, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Randall Kelly's question is a trust needed for both personal use and business use separately, or can they be combined into one trust?
I think if your business is small and you're just beginning, you only need one trust. The business would be out as a storefront and the back office would be the trustees. But as it gets larger, you might want to expand the number of trusts you have. The Rockefellers reportedly have 50 or more trusts. So it just depends on how large your wealth becomes. The bigger it becomes, the more you want to separate it out and the more trustees you'll have. But it doesn't matter, because if it's all the paper trail is happening and everything is done according to natural law trust and the information we give you, then you'll have the information you need to either keep it as one unit or make multiple trusts.
Yeah, and some people have one for family holdings, some for business, some for investments, different trusts for different purposes. Like
Sure.
that. Yeah. And Oscar asks, what if one business is private and the other is nonprofit?
I would make two trusts out of that. If one is a nonprofit, that's like a foundation, that would be separate from a family trust.
Makes sense. Loisius says, what happens to the asset when the fiat currency will not be valid?
You'll have whatever asset you have in the trust will take on that new value. So it doesn't matter where the value goes, your asset will still have an equitable foundation to it. The value of it will continue to be the same.
Right. In other words, changing title of ownership to the trust is a separate issue from whether the value is supported by currency or not.
Well, sure. And, even like currencies between countries are different values according to whoever it's binding to. That's why we're trying to get back to the gold standard, where everything is based on gold. And so $1 bill here will be the same as a dollar bill in Europe or South America. They'll all be adjusted to be of equal value.
Randall, you were talking about protecting foreign currency, and Colette asks, are ZIM bonds considered foreign currency?
Would you say that again, please?
She asks, are ZIM bonds considered foreign currency?
ZIM?
Yes.
Yes. Right now, it doesn't have much value, but when it gets converted, it's supposed to be of significant value. So those are one of the currencies that I'd have you notarize when you put it in a trust.
Mm-hmm. All right. Joyce asks, to set up the trust for rentals like automobiles and such, can you help with that, and how much extra for assistance?
Well, first of all, I would never put a liability in a trust. So unless the car is extremely valuable, I'll just have an insurance policy on it, because it's a liability. Anything that can cause harm would be a liability. So that's why if you do real estate, then and you own it, the trust owns it, the trust is responsible for the maintenance of the house. Because if somebody gets hurt on it, then the trust can be sued. So that's where notarizing comes in handy, and that's where the responsibility of the trustees also comes in the forefront. You have to take care of the property, whether it's currency or houses or real estate or anything of value. You might have valuable paintings, you might have gold, whatever's valuable can go into the trust under different schedules.
Thank you. New one says, does one need to prepare other documents such as the tax exempt bank account, etc., opting out of the system documents before doing the trust?
No, it's up to you, because for the past 10 years that I've been writing trusts, the dollar is a dollar. I've been using Federal Reserve notes, so it's not important to do it. It's important to do it at some point, but the choice is yours.
In other words, no, it's not required for the trust to
No.
be effective. Yeah. All right. Curtis asks, I have had my trust with $30 in it for over a year at my credit union. It's in another state, so I have not been able to deposit any more money. They have not closed the account yet. Is it possible they still could? Thank you.
Well, you can easily do work with a bank in another state. Like if you want to put money into it, you can take a check and write it to the account in the bank, and you sign both sides and take pictures of both sides, and it would go into the account. You have to check with your bank on that, but I've done it a number of times. I can't swim that far across to the mainland anymore, so whenever I do business with my mainland bank, then I just do it through the use of camera and photographs.
There you go. Okay. New one says, what mistakes have people made before in setting up the trusts? That's a good question.
I missed that. Could you say it again, please?
What mistakes have people made before in setting up the trusts?
Well, one of the most prevalent is that they don't get it signed and they don't get a bank account open. It's not necessary to open a bank account, but it is necessary to have everybody sign the document. And then whatever activity that the trust takes part of would be recorded. So it's really important to have a paper trail in the trust once it's going. Even if it's minor things are okay. You can use when you have a bank account, basically the bank statement every month will take care of the needs of recording that whatever activity has taken place in the trust. So in that case, every month you get a statement. If it's been active, you would have the trustee sign a minute. Now, if there's no activity for 2 or 3 months, then there's no need to have a trustee meeting. But whenever some significant activity happens, then you all have to sign the document, and you can do that all electronically. I just did a trust with somebody and we sent it to 2 different places, and then they combine them, so it all works out together.
And I can say, Randall, that you've been extremely good at guiding people and staying out of trouble and not making mistakes if they just follow your guidance.
Yes, we've been batting 100 for now.
Fabian asks, I created a family revocable trust and put my house and bank accounts in it. Are these assets protected?
If it's a revocable trust, it's not going to be protected as it would be in an irrevocable, because a revocable trust, you, the creator, are also the trustee and the beneficiary. So if you own everything, then you haven't really separated yourself from the asset. And that's what you want to do. That's the whole idea of the irrevocable natural law trust, is to separate that asset from yourself, to protect it. And to protect yourself as well.
Yep. That's what makes the natural law trust invincible. A revocable trust, they can, if you had an attacker, they could force you to revoke the transfer, get it back out of the trust. You can't do that with a natural law trust.
As long as you've got to have that distance. At least one person has to be unrelated. 2 trustees, one of them has to be unrelated.
Marvin asks, what is a fiduciary role in a trust?
Well, that's what being a trustee is. So if you're a trustee, you have a fiduciary responsibility, because the trustee is going to own legal and lawful title to the property for your benefit. There's your separation right there. Trustee owns it and you don't, but you get the benefit of it. And so that's where your paper trail becomes important.
Thank you. And Gregory asked, is this type of trust a form of private membership association?
I don't know what a private membership association would be, so I can't.
Well, it's a statutory entity that basically says we're not giving this product or service to the public, so you can't accuse us of doing so. It's only for private members. And it's kind of a, a protection mechanism within the statutes.
Well, then it would be a statutory process.
Right.
And the natural law trust is there's a separation between you and the asset. And as long as you have a paper trail, that your status is good.
I can answer this. Don is asking, is the trust fee included in the ZIM bonds? In other words, can you take the trust fee out of the ZIM value? We wish we could, Don. We've had people ask that. After it revalues, sure. You'd have
Right.
billions and you could deduct the trust cost from your billions, but before it's valued, it's not worth much. So those who are assisting you in constructing the trust and running it have to pay the bills currently out of existing currency that spends, Colette asks, regarding notarizing for foreign currency, is there a specific form that the notary needs, or do they notarize the actual bond itself?
No, there's a form in the trust document that's specifically for that foreign currency. And you're going to get a date stamp. That's why you're going to notarize it. So there's a date stamp that you assign it to the trust before it took any value at all. That's why you got to notarize all of that paper that is going to be revalued.
Right. So it's not the bond itself. It's the exchange document documenting the transfer of the asset to the trust on that particular date.
That's right.
Yeah. Ocean asks, if the trust owns the home, can the trust sell it?
Yes. The trust can buy, when you look at the trust document, it's almost 2 pages of power that the trusts have, specific powers. So whatever the trust owns, it can do whatever it wants with it. It can rent it, can sell it, can trade it. It's the lawful owner that matters. So if the trust is the lawful owner of the asset, then it can do as it wants.
Mm-hmm. Kelly says, can you recommend ways to build a credit profile for a trust?
Sure, you do a lot. If you're doing business out of the trust, you would build it on the credit of the trust doing the work. So if you have a business, then the business is owned by the trust, and you would be talking to your banker, and you as the trustees would be doing the trading or buying and selling. So you would have a track record that you could take to the bank. So you will build during the time that you're a trustee, you'll build credit for the trust itself.
Yeah, and you could start with a reserve credit line that's backed by a deposit of some cash, like $5,000 or whatever, and you borrow, get a credit line of 5,000 against your cash deposit. Start borrowing and repaying and building it up, and then increase it and scale up from there.
Yeah, I got in 2 years when I opened a bank account and kept adding to it instead of subtracting to it, and sure enough, a credit card showed up with the trust name on it with me as trustee. So that'll happen.
I think Kelly's asking this because she's a real estate investor, and A lot of people invest in real estate with these trusts.
Sure.
All right. And Marvin asked, can we use a credit union to set up a trust?
Absolutely.
Well, the trust is set up by Randall for you, and then you can open the account at the credit union. Yes. New one says, can international real estate in different nations be put into the trust?
I would suggest that you would have a trust specifically for that estate if it's out of the country. Form your trust in the US and then take that asset and put it into the trust so that it's separate from everything else. So you'll have to interchange with each country sometimes if you're doing real estate. There are different real estate laws. So I've had a little process for that with a few clients. And what we do is we end up getting a bank account in the US, and then we can do, it's easy to get a bank account in another country once you have an account here.
All right. Thank you. Ocean asks, how should one go about setting up an endowment, and how should the trust handle it?
You can just, basically the trust is for the beneficiary. So you might decide that you are going to give a beneficiary a certain amount of money to do something with it, a specific event perhaps. So it could be like an endowment, but trustees, with this discretionary trust that we do, the trustees can give more to one beneficiary than the other, depending on the needs. So if one person, if one of the children in the trust is going to go to college, the trustees can give more money to that child to support that education. And as the others come along, then more money would come to them as well.
Excellent. And Ocean, you may want to look at private placement programs on our website as well for building the endowment. Okay. Galaxy asks, how do I record meeting minutes?
On a piece of paper or on a tape recorder or on a telephone. It's just a record of what you've done, what decision you made, what activity you've done. So if it's on a phone, then there's a phone record of it. If it's face to face, then the signing of a piece of paper by both the trustees would work.
Mm-hmm.
And you just put it into the minute section of the record, the trust record. So you might make a phone call and take an action. And so you record that and sign it and put it into the trust document.
Mm-hmm. Good to keep documents in your computer, and also a print copy in a 3-ring binder. And also if you have audio or video. Yeah.
Sure.
Ocean says, when adding foreign currencies into the trust, which one is better, circulated or uncirculated? That's not really a topic for the trust discussion. If forming a trust as a ministry or church, would the members be the beneficiaries?
Well, you're stretching the use of a trust if you're going to have a church. If you're going to have a church, I would suggest the 508 foundation.
Which you also create for people. Yes, Randall?
Yeah, we could put that together. I just had some interest in it this week, in fact. I think there's a book on our bibliography. If you look in the DIC library, you'll find it. It's called The Corporation Soul.
Yeah, so for a church, Would a corporation sole make the members of the church beneficiaries?
No, the reason it's called a corporation sole is because there's only one person in it.
Okay,
So if you're doing something for the public, then you're looking at a 501c3 foundation, but it's difficult to use a trust that way. So if you want to form a church, form the church as either as a 508 or as a 501c3. In the 508, people can give to the corporation sole, but they don't get a tax write-off. And that's why most churches are 501c3. And then that way the people that give to the church can write off their tithings. Unfortunately, when you have a 501c3, you're under the fingers of the IRS, whereas a 508 is you're keeping free of the statutory process. It's like an independent natural law contract.
all right. Aloysius says, will a Swiss bank deal with a natural law trust made in the USA?
I've had that opportunity to explore that yet. But I have some clients in France, and they've been able to open accounts, and England also, United Kingdom.
Well, there's no reason why it wouldn't.
Nope, it's just your relationship with the banker.
And everyone needs to understand that just because we live in the United States and write the trust from here doesn't mean that it's subject to US laws and therefore is provincial or geographically domiciled. It is not. That's why we put the word international in it.
Yes, it can be domiciled anywhere at any time. You might start here, then you might go to Europe. And if you live in Europe, you want to open up a bank account in Europe with the trust. So that's what you would do. And then you can go elsewhere. Whatever you want to do, it's pretty flexible.
It's a private contract.
Yes.
Universal, Uniform Commercial Code is global, planetary.
Right.
Don asked an interesting question. How do you earn money to make a living opening trusts? Well, you could join Brilliance in Commerce as an affiliate, Don, and be a consultant on the trusts, and you would receive commissions that way. So click on affiliates on our website. Okay.
And I'll train you how to be a good trustee.
Yes, Randall will train you, and Dominique as well, once you have a trust. Yeah.
Oh, especially Dominique. She's the one.
And new one says, under what circumstances would the tax authorities expect taxation?
Well, they expect it all the time, but as we have in our midst, somebody is going to tell us that that's not true. I think Kelly is her name. Is that the woman that's going to do that?
In other words, no, the natural law trust has no tax filing requirements. So there are no circumstances in which that has ever been a problem for any of our clients over several decades. All right, Colette asks, for trusts with significant assets, do you have any recommendations for directors and officers' insurance policies?
Well, you can have an insurance policy on whatever asset you might have. That's up to the trustees. If you have a valuable painting, you might want to have an insurance policy on that, even though the trust owns it.
Mm-hmm.
Like anything else. You want to protect it. So the natural law trust will protect it because it's separate from you, but you still have to take care of the assets in the trust. In fact, if you're a trustee, you're responsible for that, to do that.
Excellent answer. Thank you. And Colette, you said any specific items to be included in policies? That goes beyond the scope of this webinar. That's more an insurance question.
Right.
And Ocean says, can the trust be the owner of a nonprofit?
Sure. Nonprofit could make the beneficiary of the nonprofit would be the trust.
Mhm. Joyce says, I can create my own indemnity bond for my rental property.
I don't know anything about that, so it's not my Kuliana.
That, I think, was a comment to help the other listeners. All right, BRY says, is it a 508c1a?
Well, I don't know the tag numbers on them. I know that the corpuscle is a 508 if it's not attaching itself to the government.
Right, it's under the statute 508. Yeah. Okay, Marvin says, if you have a fiduciary over your trust other than yourself, are you handing over power of attorney to that fiduciary?
I got a Santa going on outside. Could you say that again?
Uh, If you have a fiduciary over your trust other than yourself, are you handing over power of attorney to that fiduciary?
Yes. You're trusting that trustee, but he has a fiduciary obligation to you. So if you don't trust that trustee, then I would replace them with somebody that you do trust. So they do have the power over what property's in the trust, but they have a fiduciary responsibility to protect it for your benefit.
And please be reminded, Marvin, that you can be that fiduciary if you wish. And Oscar asks, do the employees under the trust need to pay income tax?
That's up to them.
Yep. All right, Gregory asked, if running a trust as business, as a public facing business, like a bakery, are health codes and sales taxes, etc., required?
Probably the state, if the state has a state tax, then you'll have to pay the state tax as an excise tax or take care of any health concerns. It's the responsibility of the trust and the trustees to make sure that that business has all the proper permits.
Gina asked, can I be an affiliate with you without having my own trust? And the answer is yes. We don't make a requirement like that, but of course it's in your interest as soon as you can.
Yes.
All right. Joyce says, you said a trust can own a nonprofit, so can spiritual organization be a nonprofit that offers services but doesn't take donations?
I've never done business like that, so I can't really speak to it.
Well, I don't see any reason why not. Basically, Joyce and everyone, a spiritual organization or any kind of enterprise or project, humanitarian project, can have its title of ownership in a natural law trust, whether it earns its revenue through donations or sales of things or whatever.
I would agree.
Yeah. Don says, can we replace a trustee before the expiration of a trust contract if needed?
Yes. But you need to have cause for that. So if the trustee is doing his duty, then why would you replace him? You'd have to retrain the new trustee. So unless the trustee is in breach of trust, then I would keep him and train him.
All right, Gina, your hand is raised. Let's unmute you and ask you to speak on the air if you'd like.
Hi.
Hi, Gina.
Yep. How are you?
Excellent.
Good. So my question too then, how can I go about reaching you to, try to become an affiliate then? How would you do that?
You click at the top of the website where it says affiliates, and you'll see a sign up registration form there.
And it's as simple as that?
Simple as that. There's no fee to do so, and we'll welcome you.
Okay. I would love the training, and then I would get like materials or the video tutorials
Oh,
or,
we have a big, rich resource library for. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
so many hours. Yeah.
Then attend these webinars with Randall and read the ebooks and, study the website and all the resources. We have a lot of videos. Yeah, we have a lot of resources.
Okay. I'm going to look into that for sure.
Well, thank you and welcome.
Welcome.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
welcome. Thank
How did
you.
how did you hear about us?
Do you know Dr. Mitch McConnell, Holland? I kind of saw him on your website
One
and
of my very good friends.
yeah,
McCollum. I think he's on
Yeah.
to us today.
oh, okay. So I kind of got acquainted with him somewhat, and I was looking at trust. I went to a trust webinar, and I have a paralegal legal background, and went to somehow I discovered your web page because I'm just a searcher, researcher online, and I've been getting your information about 2 years now. So that's how I found you. I don't know. I was researching online a lot.
Well, fantastic. Welcome so much. Are you in San Diego?
No, I live way out in Ohio where it's cold and green and gray.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, yeah. But I've been to California. It's a nice area. I've been to Arizona, California. Yeah, but I definitely want to take these courses. So how much training do you really need to get like really, strong with the information in that?
Well, to share this
you just
information,
have a desire.
yeah,
Okay.
And then
Well,
you
I
start.
believe in the trust law. Yeah, I worked in probate court for many years doing air investigations for a company called American Air. So I have some familiarity with unclaimed money and wills and trusts and probate law. So it's a natural inclination to want to protect assets and help people and myself, financially, because, look what's going on in our world. It's so unsettling and so insecure and so volatile and on and on and on. And I like
absolutely.
right. And I like the fact that you can preserve your money without the government getting involved and
Mhm.
claiming money. Yeah. So
Trust will avoid probate.
probate tax,
If you don't
yeah.
have a trust when you die, then it goes in a will. It's going to have to
Yeah.
go through probate. But if you have a trust, owns the asset, it'll never have to go through probate.
And then they don't have to give you a court-appointed attorney or a guardian or any of that mess. And it's just so emotionally sad when that happens to people.
Right.
Yeah.
The big thing, Gina, that has been a challenge for many is
Mhm.
getting out of the mindset of depending on authority coming from the courts and the government, and
Yeah.
realizing that for centuries, as Randall was saying, for centuries, we have had an international, you could call it brotherhood, sisterhood, an international community of
Uh-huh.
people who are good, who have integrity, who are
Right.
honest, who keep their word, and who
Yeah.
wish to entrust their assets with each other without the government interfering. And everyone has that right to do that.
But I think we've lost so much. Maybe it's psychological brainwashing too, in the MLM, the K. But people
Mhm.
they're programmed from life to death, and they're very afraid of stepping out of that little
Mhm.
zone. And like you say, they rely. It's like your family. Like you're supposed to have to do these things. That's being a sound citizen to give back, or you got to give it to the court. And honestly, the lawyers get most of and the judges decide what to do for you.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, I've had friends who've had trusts, so I have some familiarity. So yeah, I agree with them.
You know why attorneys are buried 12 feet deep when they die instead of the usual 6 feet?
Oh, God. I can only imagine the answer to that question, joke.
Because deep down, they really are good people.
When they're down, yeah, that's when they realize. Yeah, exactly. I like that. I agree. That's true, unfortunately, today more than ever. It's really sad out there. Yeah, for sure.
All right,
And
well,
so,
thank you.
yeah, I'll get in touch with you all.
Absolutely. We'll look forward to chatting further.
All right, thank you. You have a good night.
Thank you. Good night. We have a
Bye-bye.
question from Michael. Michael asks, can you have a token grantor to establish yourself as a trustee and to increase the corpus by exchanging property for certificates of beneficial interest in the trust?
Well, you can have a nominee grantor and be a trustee, and you can assign assets to the trust, and as long as you have a co-trustee that is not related to you. So yes, nominee grantors, which we have, good sweet Dominique Tackett is can be a nominee trustee for your trust,
Nominee
And-
grantor?
nominee grantor.
Yeah. Or you can choose anyone you like for that.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Let me see here. We have a long question.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that.
Okay, excellent. Anyone else? Any questions? Any further considerations, comments? Anyone want to raise their hand? Our next webinar, May 18th, 2022. Put it on your calendar if you haven't already. So thank you, everyone. Let's see, Diana, your long question I'm going to address privately, so take note of that. Randall, any closing comments?
No, just always a pleasure to entertain a few people that want to get a trust, that are interested.
Dominique, did you want to say anything?
Well, you can be an affiliate. I want to do that.
Just an incredible thank you to my mentor, Randall. Thank you so much. And Tansen, thank you so much. I always stress when we have our trustee study groups that we are training our minds to be custodians, and the importance of passing on this mindset of caring for ourselves, our family, our community, and our planet, that having a trust renders such an incredible amount of service to people, especially when our elders pass away, because you don't have all that emotionality related to some major assets. Those major assets have already been properly placed so that when someone does pass on, we can honor their life and not have to worry about their assets. So I so appreciate you all so much.
And we appreciate you. It's very, very mutual because you've made such major contributions to our community, Dominique. It will never be forgotten, and it goes on growing and expanding. So thank you, everyone. A grateful heart is a magnet for miracles. Let's end on that note.
Such cool people.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Enjoy.
World peace.
World peace, absolutely. Okay.